Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Cachet, and you are watching Shade with the Hobbies. I know it's been a while, but we are here with episode 8 of season 3 of Riley Conversations, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Britt Rightly. I don't know which way the camera's gonna be, so I'm just pointing both ways. But Britt, go ahead and introduce yourself for the people, please.
Hi, my name is Britt. My channel is Britt Writerly. It's a book and author tuber talk about the intersections of literature and culture, mostly through mostly through my Friday morning reading sprints at this point, and those are pretty cool. We have really great conversations, so that's a place where you can come and chat live with me and Shay when she's not watching her cute baby niece. Um, so yeah, come on over. And then obviously Riley Conversations, we talk about lots of things. So, but if you want to see me and all of my musical, singing, reading, ranting, fangirling glory every Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Britt Writerly. And if you like it a lot over there, and there's lots of backlog also, so there's other videos and blah, blah, blah. But if you like what you see over there, you can go ahead and push that big red button and we can be internet friends.
Today in this episode, we are going to be talking about something, as the fall comes in writerly conversations, the conversations get down to writerly very much so because we're gearing up for Preptober and then Oraimo and getting all the words together and whatnot. So it makes sense that we're going to be talking about juggling multiple whips, aka works in progress. If you didn't know what that was, just in case you're new and don't know the lingo or whatever. Multiple stories is what we're going to be talking about. And so if you're new here, you won't know this, but we're not even going to ask if we juggle because we do. If you're new here, you wouldn't know that, but everyone else who's been here, yeah, we're always working on at least 3 stories at a time. I'm not even gonna say 2 because that's not the truth. It's not the truth. There's almost always three things going on for both of us. It'll be like a nonfiction something and 2 fiction somethings going on, like at all times. It's just the way that it is. And we've accepted this about ourselves. So with that being said, the first question is why do we juggle multiple works in progress? And Britt, you want to go ahead and take it away?
Sure. I honestly forgot when Shay said nonfiction, I was like, you write nonfiction? And then I was like, maybe she means me. I don't know. I mean, I do technically write
Well,
nonfiction, I
blogging
suppose.
is like nonfiction, like it's not
Okay.
right.
Okay.
And your
Okay.
master, your doctorate stuff is nonfiction. It's
That's
right.
true.
So
That's
yeah.
what I like paused and was like, who writes nonfiction? I was like, I do. I write
Oh
technically.
wow.
I don't mean
Okay. So,
I don't think about it
but
like that.
but also this is why constantly this is why you need a me because I'm gonna remember what she not gonna remember.
It's
How I
usually that
remember
my
that
friends
she
remember.
writes nonfiction.
I just don't think about it like that, especially because I'm writing about fiction in my
Right.
nonfiction. But yeah, no, the dissertation is definitely a work of nonfiction. Um, listen. But anyway, yeah. So part of that is necessity, right? Like I have a dissertation. I also write novels. So yeah, automatically that's multiple things because the dissertation has to be done. And then I'm writing alongside that. So that's at least 2 things I'm always working on, the dissertation and then whatever novel. And so part of it is necessity. And the other part of it is I I really started working on multiple projects when I was still trying to do traditional publishing, and it was advice that I got from multiple authors, and they are basically saying you need to do it to keep yourself from going crazy waiting. If you're querying, right? So like when I was querying hashtag first fantasy used to be all I saw. It used to be all I worked on, and they were like, you need to the way to let a story go is to work on another one, right? So if you're querying something, then instead of having to wait the 4 to 6 weeks or more to hear back from somebody, like have it out there. When it's out there, it's out there, and work on another one to keep yourself going crazy waiting. Because I watch kettle never burns. A watch pot never boils, something like that. Anyway, bubble bubble, who cares? Anyway, so so that's why I started working on multiple, even like fiction whips at a time, was so that I wouldn't be watching and waiting for responses from the other one. And I just continue to do it even though I'm not querying anymore.
So the answer for me is I get bored. I get bored. Sometimes a writer's block happens and I'm like, I cannot figure out where to go in this scene. And it's like, well, let me just start on this scene, random scene from something else to get my mind on something. Have I written like 4 random scenes that I don't know if they're gonna go in anything with random characters in the last weekend, because I was like, I need to get back in the habit of writing fiction so that I can make my actual stories go forward. Yes. Yeah, so it is because like it helps me creatively to be able to move from project, to move from thinking about this contemporary coming of age story to move into this thriller, to move into this mystery. Different types of stories exercise different types of me, different parts of storytelling as a writer. So it's like, yeah, I might be really good at the dialogue in this, but that's not what I want to work on this week. So let me switch to the project where I'm going to have to be better at showing and leaving red herrings for this mystery. Like that's what I need to work on. So I need to switch projects because I'm not throwing red herrings in the middle of this contemporary. Because why? What does that have to do with anything? That just doesn't even make any sense. So that for me is why like I get bored and I need to do other things. And I mean, it's kind of always been like that. Like I'll be writing poetry and then I'll be writing short stories. So I've kind of always been writing multiple things at one time. So I've never really known a time where I was only focusing on one thing anyway. So it kind of works out that way. Whew. Y'all, these yawns. Okay. Question number 2. What is a bonus to juggling multiple works in progress, do you think?
I think the bonus is it keeps you from going crazy on one. By now, if you've been there for any length of time, you know about the great 15 revision cycle of hashtag first fantasy. Um, Working on different stories keeps you moving, right? So I can't be working on this one story forever if I'm working on this other story. So I think one, it helps you to be efficient and not obsessive over one story, because writers, one thing I had to learn, and like I'm always stretching towards this, like writers write, right? So you're not trying to have a career where you write one story. So you need to be able to let things go, and working on multiple whips really helped me have to let things go, because I can't fuss over you forever if I'm also working on this thing. I need to be efficient. Like what needs to happen? Execute that thing and get out of there. Like stop making up things to change. Stick to your list, and then send it down the line, whether it's to alphas, to CPs, to betas, editor, whomever. Like you get into a good habit of like ordering your writing process and trusting the process to produce the strongest story you're able, and you just get better and better at like storytelling. But going through the process of execution, like working on multiple whips, has made me have to be more disciplined and letting stories go and moving them down the process. So that's definitely one benefit. And then also just like learning lessons. I might get into like write myself into a corner over here, and I'm just like, all right, well, I need to like breathe from that to get some perspective. But now I won't do that same thing that got me into a corner on this other story that I'm working on. And then I end up being able to immediately put into practice the lessons that I learned from one whip on another. So that's another, those are like 2 main benefits of multi writing.
I think that it helps you to become a better writer because If you stay in one story, you have one set of characters' voices. If you're working in multiple works in progress, you get to jump to a new character. So, am I really good at voice, or was I just good at this character's voice? Can I make this character sound different? Can I make this world sound different? Am I good at making this place sound different from this place before? Does this house sound like this house? Does this family sound like this family? Did I change the way that this main character's disposition is compared to this character? And you only get that working with multiple works in progress. If you're doing it one at a time, then you got to go through this story to get to that story, to get to that, to get to it. And you learn very quickly whether you're good at doing that or not. Like you'll get into that second story and you'll be like, dang, this sounds a lot like that character I just wrote. But if you had to wait till you finish that entire story to get there to start this next character, you're not really getting that practice of writing newer characters and making their voices distinct. And you don't really get that practice as much as you think you do in one specific story, because you're not working, unless you have multiple main characters, you're not working to make every character's voice distinct. You're working to make the main character distinct and make the side characters kind of unique and stand out a little bit, but they're not the main character. So you don't put in as much effort. Like, it's just like, you know what I mean? Not to say that you don't put in work with them, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not the same amount of effort because they're not the main character. And so when you're doing multiple works, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, when you do multiple works in progress, you're getting to do that right off the bat. You're getting to be able to see that a lot sooner and being able to be like, oh, okay, this is where I'm not as strong at because this character sounds just like this character. Like even with me, like a lot of my characters are very like smart, like very snappy characters, but they all sound different with how they are snappy with each other. They're not the same way, but I had to work on that, and I didn't know that until I started writing different characters and working on them simultaneously. So
yeah, because I'd say like it's hard to even see that when you're writing one character after the other. I mean, in one whip after another, right? Because in a way, when you finish a novel or a story, however, whatever the length, it's like you sort of like and cleanse your mind of it, right? So you're not looking at the writing style of that character anymore. You have pod them from your mind. So you're going to this new story, and because you have a new context and a new world and new family dynamics around, voice gets lost. Voice just becomes whatever comes out of your fingers, and you're not thinking about, okay, I just closed this document. Now I'm in this new document. This looks the same, right? It's kind of like when you're on Word and you can hold two documents up at the same time and look directly at a comparison and contrast. When you do multiple whips at a time, you get to do that, as opposed to your brain saying, we're done with that. We're not reflecting on that. We're not looking at that. We're working on this. And then that takes up all of your attention. When you do multi-whips, you can really have that comparison and contrast because your brain, even in the back of your mind, has both of those tabs open, and you're more likely to recognize patterns because they're both on your mind. When you're done with something, out of sight, out of mind, you're not really thinking about it. So yeah, totally agree.
Okay, so the next one is, what is a pitfall or something to avoid when juggling multiple works in progress? And for me, it is the thing that it is the hardest thing for me, and is not finishing. The call is coming from inside the house. It's me, oh Lord.
Standing in the need of prayer. That's right.
It's me. Because it can always be better. It can always get, and then so I mean, there's really nothing else to say. Like, it's just, that's the issue. And I just don't finish, and I'm trying. This is not at all saying that just because we have these conversations, we good at every. No, not at all. Because I'm not.
Absolutely not.
Nah. It's hard. It's hard out here for people.
Hello.
I'm trying to get these words for these stories. It's just not.
Hello.
It's just. And
No,
it's
it's hard.
always because when I get a block, you'd be like, well, I got another story. I can just
Yeah. Oh no, not escapism. Not you running from it.
and I got so many stories that just don't. So no. That is it. That is the number one for me. I'm just gonna say for me, that's the number one. And as we are talking in this September, for the last quarter of the year, that is my goal to stop avoiding finishing these things and finishing them, to see things through to the end.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. It is hard. And I'm the thing that I don't think is talked about enough is writing truly takes discipline.
Oh yes.
Like it takes discipline. It takes little boy, really. It takes discipline. And somebody is being disciplined, and that's why they're doing that thing. But it takes discipline and being able to like sit down and see this novella to the end is my goal for this last quarter to get there. But the juggling multiple works in progress, like that has been a thing because it'll be like, oh, I can just go to this short story. Oh, somebody sent me a short story submission. Let me just well, it'll give me money if I win it, and the money could help me publish the novella. So I might as well do it, and I can.
Yeah.
And these are all true things, and they're all right? But still, there comes a time where you have to decide to put away childish things.
Hello.
And and so I've decided that time is this last quarter of the year. So there we go. So that's my answer to the question.
Okay. For me, it's very much coming from what we just said. One of the potential benefits of writing multi-stories, of multi-writing, right, is that you see the patterns in your writing and have a chance to disrupt them and make each story distinct. That's an opportunity. You got to take advantage of it, because one of the very easy pitfalls is just in your mind, you don't have those stories distinct as they should be. You're just writing. You're just hitting word counts, right? And so the voice can easily cross over from this WIP to this WIP because your brain isn't making them distinct, because you don't have decided upon speech patterns. And I think that's something that I have really had to like think about and still struggle with, right? Is that like, yes, people don't all talk the same, but what does it mean to have distinct voices? Because in some ways people do talk the same, right? Like when you're all friends and you were all living in the same place and have for a while, unless you're writing an adult novel where people are like coming from all over, or even like a new adult and it's in college and they're coming from all over, when you're doing YA, unless someone just moved there, they like
they're gonna
they do kind of talk alike. Yeah,
right,
they talk
they've all
really
grown
similar.
up around each other and everything.
Exactly.
Right.
Even with friends I've only had for a year, I start picking up their linguistic mannerisms.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, especially if you talk a lot. Yeah.
Yes, like one of my friends, and I had never heard anyone say this really a lot before her, but whenever she agrees with something, she'll be like, hello. I had never, but if you've noticed, like I have started saying that. Like if you just got here, maybe you didn't know that I didn't used to say that, but it just slips in. Where I'm just like, hello. Because we talk so often and because it's so distinct, you just pick up things. Ironically, you pick up things that are distinct in other people and then they become yours, and that's how things become common. So it's difficult for me to have characters have distinct voices, because I'm like, well, what does that sound like? Because it has to not sound contrived, right? You want her to have a unique voice, but it can't sound contrived. And so I think one of the things that I have really tried to do in that is like not focusing so much on them having a distinct voice, because they may not have distinct linguistic patterns, but not thinking of the voice as the way they say words, but what words are they even saying, right? So voice not being too literal with their grammar and their, their speech patterns, but just like would like Eliza and Belle, right? For any of you who were super A1 day ones on Grit Writerly, y'all remember when I was doing like installments of Tales of Eliza Black before I tried to make it a novel. So you got to meet Belle and Laz and Eliza and blah, blah, blah. Those three people do not talk the same. They're all from the same town. They don't use different like slang or vernacular, but they don't have the same concerns. They don't even all have the same values. They're not all in the same place. So one way that Laz would respond to something is not the way that Belle would respond to something. First of all, she'd probably cuss, and he definitely wouldn't. Even if they're saying the same thing, she would be like, H no, and he'd be like, no. Right. So like it's just like the word choice in some ways, but then also like he might respond with, can we like figure out a way where we can argue when we need it? She might be like, here's what's gonna happen. Right. So like letting their personality define how they respond versus focusing on the grammar of the response. Because it's not always going to be as black and white as this character uses profanity, this character doesn't. But how would their values and their personality move them to respond?
That's exactly what I was waiting for you to stop to say. I was like, personality is voice for me. It's not just what they say. Personality is included in voice, because that'll be the one thing that I know when I'm like beta reading or critique reading, it'll be like, now I've been sitting with this character for like a good 80 pages now. This don't fit their personality for what you done said for this thing for the last 80 pages. I'm confused by this. This feels like a character you had from another story. Did you realize that they wouldn't react like this? Did you think about this? So personality plays a big part in it. Like even in Blankets and Burglary, like Charisse is more mild mannered than Reggie, but Charisse won't be mild mannered when she feels confronted by somebody who is different from her. Like she'll be like, da, da, da. She'll imitate Reggie. She'll pick up on her best friend and be similar to her best friend. But in the face of her best friend, she's very timid. Her best friend is very much boisterous and flamboyant and out there from her, and she plays the back seat to her best friend. And that is very, very visual in the very first conversations you see with them in the story. But then a dude comes and talks to her, and then she's like snappy, and you're like, what? But it's Reggie is right there, and Reggie she feels like I have to be this way because but it fits for what's going on in the situation, and then the way that the thoughts play in. So I think that that's the other thing that I feel like you learn again as you start to juggle multiple works in progress, is that personality affects voice just as much as region and where you grew up and who you grew up around. Is your personality changes how you're gonna say things versus that. So especially like what you're saying with Laz and Belle, like, yeah, no, they're definitely not gonna say, they can say the exact same thing in two very, very different ways. So when you are working on multiple projects, what do you limit yourself to? What is your limit? And then how do you keep yourself from getting overwhelmed?
Do you want to start that one? I feel like I've started all of the answers.
Okay, I thought I started the last one, but I got you. Yeah, I got you. Okay, so my limits. I honestly don't necessarily have a number limit. I I work on the things that I think are like the priority wise, right? Like I like Best Served Cold. I know I want to write, but it has not been in the forefront of my mind for a while, because I know that there's a lot more research that I have to do. There's a lot more reading that I need to do. There's a lot of different things I want to do to get the historical aspects of what I want to include into the story right. Gia's never went to college. It's an open work in progress, but it's something that I have not been into. But oh my gosh, college football season got ideas flowing and scenes been going, and I'm trying to save it for January, save it for January. You got to be disciplined, got to be disciplined. But like, it's what I know that I have the capacity for is my limit, if that makes sense. So it could be that I only have the capacity for this short story competition and blankets and burglary. That's all I have the capacity for. So I'm working on those two projects and a blog post, right? Like a random blog post. But so those are the only two things that I have the capacity for. Or it might be I'm working on the short story, I'm working on Penelope's Curve short story collection and Blankets and Burglary. Oh, and I might be working on a couple of chapters for Jesus Never Went to College, or a couple of scenes for Jesus Never Went to College. Is what I'm like mentally and creatively able to handle. And that for me fluctuates. It's not ever necessarily a like standard number, limit wise. So I don't have a number. But that goes back to something that if you've been here, know yourself. Know yourself. You have to be in tune with yourself, because sometimes like this summer it was like I don't got the capacity for nada, so I wasn't working on not a dang thing because I had the capacity for not a lick of fiction, because I could not get it to go right. As far as how do I keep myself from getting overwhelmed, I know myself. If I can't I'm gonna drop it. I am. Because again, we've already, if you're new here, you don't know this, but we've already committed to the fact that we're not looking to traditionally publish. That's not really the road for either of us. So the only person I'm responsible to is myself and God. Like, that's it. I'm responsible to myself and God. And at that, like, God want me to do the best that I can do. I want to do the best that I can do. And the best that I can do requires me to be at my best. And if being at my best means I need to drop this project for a little while, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to drop that project for a little while. And I will pick it back up when I can pick it back up. So that's me. I am getting better at leaning on and, hey, friends, I'm not doing too well. Might need to pull back a little bit, not doing as good. I'm getting better at saying that. It's not as easy as you think. It's not. But making others mindful of where you are. Like, I know I've been like, hey, I've been disappointed in myself. I've been feeling like I've been failing and I want to be more accountable. So can you help me be more accountable in this area so that I can get better here, right? Like, so setting up safeguards to where it's like, I understand that this might not be something I can do by myself. I might need a little bit of help. And it's okay to say that you might need a little bit of help. There's nothing wrong with admitting that you might need some help. And so for me, that's another way to keep myself from getting overwhelmed. Like, hey, I might need to ease up on this, or hey, I might need you to meet with me this time or this many times a week so that I'm getting this together. Or, hey, I'm starting to sprint these 2 hours every day if you're willing to join me so I can have some accountability. So I'm getting these words in, like, whatever I need to do to make sure that I'm like hitting my goals, but I'm not allowing myself to necessarily go it alone if I don't have to when I'm in those darker spots or when I'm in those struggling moments. Like, I'm getting better at acknowledging those and getting there. So that's another thing that I would suggest. Like, but again, all these things take time, right? Like, these aren't things that, like, we didn't learn these things overnight. This is our 3rd year of doing this series. Right, this is our 3rd year of doing this, our 3rd season. So, right, these are things that we have learned over time of working on these projects and getting through these stories and going through these ups and downs, right? So,
yeah, it takes time. What was the question again? So, I
what
was
is your
listening very
limit,
intently.
and how do you keep from getting overwhelmed?
What's your limit? Um, yeah, even though that was my question, I don't really know that I have a limit either. Actually, not a hard limit, Because even as I thought I was gonna say two, and then Shay Open was saying I'm not gonna say two either. It's not a bad thing. I was like, I don't have two because I'm only working on two right now. But then I was like, oh, the fan fiction, that's three. So I don't really remember how many stories I'm working on all the time. That's just part of it for me. Um, Sometimes when you throw a ball in the air, it takes longer to come down. That gives you a bit of a break, but it's coming down. So I I also, my limit is based on what other responsibilities I'm also juggling in addition to writing. Um, and how I keep from getting overwhelmed is I balance what I actually need to do and what I feel I need to do. So like I have this fan fiction I'm working on and I felt like I needed to do it for a time. But then there was a point where I wanted it to be done, but I had another arc that I really wanted to finish. I wanted it to end on. And I was like, well, I'm enough ahead of the production schedule where I really don't need to keep working on this every single night. Right. I feel like I want to be done, but the reality is I don't need to keep writing that right now. I could pause for a year and I would still be ahead of production. But I can definitely tap the brakes for a month, focus on this other story that I say I want to publish and do that, right? So like there's the knowing when I need to stop, but there's also the knowing when I need to not stop. So like I may not feel like working on hashtag first romance, but I'm like, well, I have this deadline with the editor. I have this deadline with the cover designer. I have this. I have that. I want to send it out to voice actors at this point. Like all of these different things. Okay, well, now that's other people involved. I do need to stay with the schedule that I had previously decided upon, which means that I may need to put this other thing, this other story on the back burner and make this the only story that I'm working on every single day. And then maybe I work on this other thing once a week. Right. And so for me, I keep from getting over by being honest with like sometimes it's good to be able to stop working on something when you don't want to, because it for me reinstates that like I'm in control of this. Like I am not in bondage to all the WIPs that I'm working on. I'm choosing to work on them. And when I want to stop, I can stop on one of them. So doing that reinstates my feeling of autonomy over it. But balancing that with like, how are you gonna feel if you stop working on this story and then you miss that goal? Okay, you're not gonna like that, right? You want to finish something, right? You want to publish something, right? Okay, well, then it's this other thing you need to pause on, and it's this thing that you just need to knuckle down, and that's where discipline comes in, where you may not always want to do it, but to get to that goal, you need to. So you need to put yourself in an environment where that can get your focus. And sometimes that looks like not working on anything else but this, but sometimes that looks like I have to do this thing. I need to get I'm writing 1300 hours, gosh, 1300 words a day for a project right now to get a first draft by this particular deadline. If that was really bumming me out, and I really wanted to be working on my fanfic, I would be like, okay, 1300 words, 5 days a week is my goal. But on the weekends, you can write the fanfic to your heart's content. Or if you're having a really crappy day and it takes you every a, then, it's, and but to get to that 1300 words, it's not real words, it's prepositions around here. Okay, if it takes you every little article to get to that 1300 words and you do it, if you can finish that by 10 o'clock, from 10 to 11, you can write on your fanfic, right? Like sometimes the multi stories gives like the one of the stories that I'm working on gives me the energy to push through another one that I'm not really feeling right now, or it's a difficult scene and I don't want to write it. Giving myself another lighter story to work on is what helps me to push through. So that's what keeps me from being overwhelmed, is like this balancing act of need and want and leveraging them to get to my goal for both of them.